process within. We're now approaching the main entrance to the facility. First, we will pass through a glass-resistant ramp, protecting personnel from operations. Next, we'll pass through some double doors. Entering the administration facility, you will find the offices, the bathrooms, the break rooms, as well as a tool storage area. We're now entering the process area. We'll pass from the main corridor through an interlock into Bay 2. Bay 2 is one of 7 low bays in this facility. Everything you see within this bay, between the lighting, the jib cranes, HVAC system, the task exhaust, was all modeled in 3D and taken directly from manufacturer's cut sheets. We're now entering Bay 4, which is one of 2 high bays that will house the pressing operations for this facility. The light-colored panels on the walls, as well as the ceiling, are acoustical panels that will reduce the noise level within the bay during operations.
It's classified.
Interlocks in the outer bays are glass-resistant doors, further protecting personnel during operations.
I had to get permission just to show this and talk about the building and post it on the website. So.
The black plates on the walls, secured by anchor bolts, are blast plates, providing additional protection to personnel during operations. We'll now pass through the interlock into Bay 5, the 3rd high bay within the facility. In this bay, machining operations will be performed.
You can see the level of detail for some of the modeling. This was a little over the top,
number of penetrations
and we don't normally
through the bays
do
and
this.
interlocks from the main corridor with all the piping. To avoid any interferences through this routing, the designers required that the modeling be designed down to 3/4 inch conduit. Bay 9 has also been affectionately called the nursery by our CAD designers.
We had a requirement to make sure that all the fixtures were blast protected as well. So that's why they're all, the cell libraries we had to produce to make sure we had this
We'll now
equipment
leave the first
to
floor
show
and
right.
head upstairs to the
enough.
mechanical mezzanine. The mechanical mezzanine houses all the HVAC systems, the electrical panels, as well as any support equipment required for the operation of process equipment. Each bay has a very stringent temperature and humidity requirement for operations. To meet this requirement, an independent HVAC system was dedicated to each bay. We'll now proceed to Area B, which is the second explosion-proof ramp protecting personnel from operations. This ramp connects the shipping and receiving area to the process area. As we enter a set of double doors, we enter the receiving area. At the end of the corridor, you see 2 roll-up doors, one elevated, one at ground level. This was done to help ease the reshipping and receiving of materials to the facility. We'll now enter through a second set of double doors into one of 2 storage facilities. This storage facility will be accessed daily by personnel for plant operations. This concludes our presentation of the new B&W processing facility.
So that's over the top bit. I think it's fair to say. Like I honestly, I think this was the only project where we actually modeled right down to bolts, and the guys weren't crazy, which I can vouch. They once you make one cell, obviously you can repeat and copy and reuse things across your entire model. So they wanted to make sure that just to demonstrate to the client that everything was 100% analyzed from the existing contract documents to the cut sheets for each and every material. They put them into that specific detail because it was a way for us to show the client we did our job and hey, we can do it pretty cool too, right?
How long did it take to put this together?
This was a 5-month project, and the video was a 4-week or a 3-week effort to do that.
Did the client pay you extra to do that, or? you
Yes.
do that in-
No, the client wanted this because that's actually the client narrating it as well. Because it's for him, it was a political thing that he wanted to display. Yes.
You refer to cut sheets. Are there manufacturers putting their own electronic cut sheets together to download them?
Yeah, we are. I'd say I don't know, a quarter of them right now. What we find is, you know, the worst manufacturers are, here's a PDF. Yeah, I don't want a PDF, right? Then they'll say, here's a CAD file. Okay, so we have the fundamental base and we can build something from it. Others will give us a dumb 3D model, so at least we have something and we can attach our data to it. I think a quarter of them here actually gave BIM. So we were able to say we want this information, and the manufacturer built that into their model. But the reason was they were Bentley based as well. So we were able to say, here's the file. Like we went right down to the file level and say, fill out what you need, and we took the file back. And then we were able to speak back and forth that way. But that's more rare. Usually the best we'll get is a 3D model, but with no information on it other than a level name. So that was level 4. Class detection, drawing, schedule, design, review, visualization were the goals for this BIM model. And now, sorry, the client said he believed, and maybe we convinced him really well, that he avoided 500 RFIs from the project, and his cost avoidance was 7 to 10 million in savings. So either that's true, or we did a damn good job convincing him of that, because this is what he wrote to us and published to his report back to the government.
And what was the overall cost of this project? Was it 500 million or?
Oh, I believe it was 280, I believe. So now that we've done the BIM, now it's like, well, how do we keep this going? What do we want to do during construction? So we go back to that same model and say, well, we want an as-built model. So when they're done building this thing, we want the model to be as robust as-built as it is right now. So I'm afraid to see what it'll look like in 3 years with the detail. And we want to do schedules and cost estimating. So that's the goal over the next couple of years. And then the constructability review will be by default of maintaining an as-built model. The focus, of course, during construction, we've defined it for quantification. We want the contractor to use our model to work with the quantities, and they're dealing with the legal ramifications behind that down in the States. So with the construction simulation, it's that concept of, you know, how are we going to lay this building out along with a whole bunch of other buildings in this facility, in the complex, sorry, and make that all work. Good. Last section. Yes, sir.
So a quick question, this BIM model, the data file, how big does it get?
It can get pretty big. What we've noticed is a lot of stuff is contained in the model itself, or sorry, in the CAD file. So in AutoCAD is DWG and MicroStation is DGN. Depending on how you split apart these files, so I've had an architectural model go up to about 20 meg, 30 meg. I've seen structural models go much higher as well. So when you put them all together, you might have about 300 meg of DGN or DWG files. Then the outputs of them all, it just depends on their size, but all that information is in the CAD file. So we used to, like we were concerned about that a couple of years, maybe like 5 years ago, saying, well, we're going to kill our networks. But the network speeds, it's all just getting so much better that with the size of these models, we're finding that we're not crippling our networks right now.
Are you resolving the finicky little details like parapet details or base plate details at this level, or is that a whole other?
No, we are to an extent. So for example, the base plate is a great one, because on that on the project in Lakeview Water Treatment Plant in Peel, we didn't deal with the base plate detail. And then all of a sudden, come tender time, the whole facade, all the precast had to move out about, I think it was 75 to account for a base plate that was at the bottom of the column. We thought we accounted for it, but we didn't. So that was a major thing, and that was like lesson learned. You always look at the base plate. The parapets, you need to know what are you going to do. So when I model, before I model, I might draw my typical wall section. right? So I'll just sit down and say, you know, how is this going to work? How high do I need my parapet to be? And work that out so that when I go and model my wall, I'll know the sandwich. I'll know how big it's going to be. I can model the pieces and I can have an idea of it. And I might get a senior architect to review it and just say, look, will this work? And then I'll go off and spend time modeling. Then I'll come back to details 2, 3, maybe 5 months later. But I want to always have that concept at the beginning. And then when I do my parapets, you know, if you're doing a flat roof and I have my brick, my insulation, my concrete block backup, when I take my plan view of it, we'll have to make sure, for example, we put a coping on top so that my roof plan doesn't see the lines of all the stuff underneath. So it's that kind of thing, and if you don't think about it up front, the minute you start cutting your drawings, it becomes evident, hey, I missed something, I better go back and model it. Because then you'll start seeing stuff that's way at the bottom because you're looking, I didn't have my coping one time, so I was looking through the cavity and seeing my door swing way at the bottom. So I said, okay, I need coping so I don't see my door. And it's that kind of thing that comes out. Yes, sir.
I'm a little lost on something about basic anchorage. What would be the basic cost per square feet additional to traditionally drawn building, let's say James doing it on the OPAD, and he wants to try the BIM? What's the basic cost per square feet additional to the budget that I would have to schedule in the consultant's cost? I mean, give me a ballpark, you're talking about $1,000?
No,
So
if we go cost per sheet,
fine,
that's so we average 60.
Work it out per sheet, per square feet. How do you work it out?
Well, we go per sheet, so I'll use per sheet. We go 60 hours a sheet for architectural drawings. With the first BIM we did, it was 80 hours a sheet. And now the current BIMs we're doing, it's down to as low as 30, between 30 and 40, depending. It depends on who your modeler is, right, how well they are with it. But my cost per sheet is down to 30 a sheet right now, when it was 60. 5 years. So it's that type of balance. Like we'll bring in a new person right now, and his cost per sheet will be 60 using BIM because he's brand new to it. But you know he's done 3D in the past, so he's brought in as a junior level, meeting the 60 per sheet. As he gets better and better, he'll bring it down to 40, probably within a couple projects.
So learning curve for him.
Well, we give him 40 hours to get integrated to start playing.
You're assuming AutoCAD-based knowledge goes on?
Yeah, our guys come in with AutoCAD most of the time
And then it's about 40 hours learning curve.
to get them able to use the software. So that's the learning effort. And then, as I said, the cost per sheet, they won't be doing 30 a sheet. They might be doing 60 hours a sheet. Maybe over 60, maybe just under 60, and then that'll slowly chip off as we move along. I'm just going to touch on, I'm going to close with interoperability. I just have 4 more slides here, and then we'll open it to more questions. So now we go to, I know I've been throwing Revit, Autodesk, Graphisoft, Revit, Bentley, and Graphisoft. Those are the main BIM tools, and I'm sure there's others, and if I don't have them on here, I apologize. But these are the most ones that I'm familiar with. So from a modeling perspective, you have Autodesk. They purchased Revit, I believe, several years ago. And Revit has architectural, structural, and an MEP platform. It's in its Revit, it's an RVT file format, so it's a Revit file format only. Autodesk Architecture, Autodesk Structural, and Autodesk MEP. It's another branch that used to be, if any of you used Architectural Desktop years ago, this is the current version of it. It's in the DWG format. So one of my biggest issues is, Autodesk, why do you have 2 streams of software? So when I ask that, I'm told, well, Revit is, it's the cool one. It's pure BIM. Okay? And I'm like, well, what's Autodesk Architecture? Well, it does BIM too, but it's not as good as Revit. Well, then why do you carry it? Well, because people liked Architectural Desktop, so we have to maintain it. So my issue with it is, Revit is RVT, Autodesk Architecture is DWG. By nature, the 2 files don't talk. When Revit wants to create a drawing, it actually it saves its drawing as a DWG. So it's AutoCAD based and you can do all of your sheet file work. They both go into Navisworks, so if you want to drive through a model, Navisworks will read DWG and it'll read RVT. CH2M Hills, half of our firm uses Revit, half of our firm uses the Bentley Building platform. Bentley Building is what I've used for the last 5-6 years because it has all the disciplines: architectural, structural, mechanical, electrical, civil as well. It has a pretty good civil platform, and plant-based piping, all in the DGN format. They all talk to each other natively, so we can model on top of each other's work and not worry about translations and conversions and everything. And it goes into Navisworks, so that if we had a sub who used Revit or a different part of the firm who's using Revit, all of our models can still talk to each other. If you asked me today, which one should I use, I would say Bentley Building, but it's triple the price. So you probably end up with the Autodesk solution. We priced it once. AutoCAD with its basic 3D and Autodesk architecture, I believe, is 4,000 Canadian. And I believe Bentley, with base MicroStation and Bentley Building architecture, comes out to be about 8,000 to 9,000 Canadian. So if it's based on cost alone, you're going to end up in the Autodesk world. And that's why I stand here, and that's why this is the last of 4 slides, because it doesn't really matter, right? You have the concept of BIM, everything I said before right now, still applies regardless of the tool. The tool is just different kind of pencil to do the same kind of concept, and depending on the pencil you choose, you might have to write a little differently. That's how I look at the software.
The third one is, what's the cost of BIM? You said the cost of the AutoCAD, the cost of Bentley, what's the cost of BIM software?
That is BIM software.
All of them?
Yes. Yeah, no, that is the cost. So the 8,000 in the Bentley world is the base platform plus Bentley architecture, which is the BIM tool. The 4,000 in the Autodesk architecture world is base AutoCAD plus AutoCAD architecture.
And then it's 12 grand?
Hmm?
You're saying then the cost of the BIM is about 12 grand?
No, in Autodesk it's 4,000. For Bentley it's 8,000. And then Revit, I've never priced Revit, so I apologize, I don't know the price of Revit architecture. The design review tools, they come essentially free with the product you purchase. So if you purchase an Autodesk product, you get Navisworks. If you purchase the Bentley product, you get Navigator. And that just gives you the ability to actually drive and walk through the models you're building. So how do they communicate? So, sorry, I skipped over Graphisoft because I'm very weak with Graphisoft, but I just know that it's out there. All these tools, the base 2D properties are interoperable. And what I mean by that is layers, line weights, line types, text styles, dimension styles, everything that you see in a basic CAD platform, they can speak from MicroStation to AutoCAD to any other platform. They're very universal. Now, what's not interoperable is I want to call it A-wall, you want to call it A-something else. Well, wall and something else, they can reside together, but they will still be two different things. So the concept of the CAD standards, we base our work on the national CAD standards as much as possible. So those are the ones endorsed by the AIA. No matter what your CAD standards are, your data will still move back and forth, but it will carry forward what you apply internal to your offices. Base software component classes. So that's a mouthful. Everything you draw in a CAD platform is a class. So when I go and draw a line, press line, point, point, it knows it's a line because the software defines it as a line. Its class is called a line. Same with circle, arc, shapes. Everything that does 2D, all those classes move back and forth. Now basic 3D properties are also interoperable as well. So when I draw a wall, hit the wall command, point, point, and I've entered my height. I can get length, width, height, surface area, volume to go back and forth between both platforms, between all platforms. That's just generic 3D properties. The geodetic coordinates, so my x, y, z, as long as my unit of measure is common, it goes back and forth. So for us in the metric world, it's perfectly, it's not an issue. If you're doing an imperial project and you're using international foot versus survey foot, there's that conversion factor where if I take an international foot file and try to overlay it onto my survey foot file, it'll be shifted. Ever so marginally, but if you're doing a long road, it's detrimental. So then there's the BIM data. So that's where, of course, it depends on a whole lot of stuff, right? So the question is, do we have a common data definition? and this is what CH2M Hill has been working with for quite a while. If I'm in my office and I call it a cast-in-place concrete wall, that's a data definition. But in your office, if you call it a wall that's made of cast-in-place concrete 200 millimeters thick, my concrete wall and your wall cast-in-place concrete are labeled differently. So if I put them both into a schedule, I have two different things, when in reality they're supposed to be the same. So what we've done is, regardless of Bentley or Autodesk, Revit, whatever the case is, in CH2M Hill we've said, okay, when we model our things, we want to do it as per the specifications. So the specifications, Division 3 has concrete. So anything that's concrete will start with a classification of concrete, because that's how it's spec'd. And then underneath concrete, we can call it wall, slab, blah, 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 and go on and on. Other definitions, I have there the Uniclass code. That's something that's prevalent in the United Kingdom, and it's kind of hopping here over the pond once in a while. And that's where it's a 200 millimeter concrete wall, but it's not called that, it's called something like a D364. And everything is classified from letter A to letter N with a number. And that number is a code that says what the material is. So I don't like that. Other people like that. The London Olympics is fully based on Uniclass. So we had to build a BIM system around the Uniclass. And as I was building it, I kept saying, I can't imagine myself modeling using this. But to them, it's second nature. If they're going to model, they're going to say, we're going to model an A36. Okay. So they know it. That's fine. The other thing we have is what's called an IFC, and that's an industry foundation class. And there's a couple of committees across North America where they're just trying to say, well, look, all you software guys are saying to model the same thing in many different ways, so let's just stand back and call a wall a wall. And that's fine. So they make everything down to its fundamentals. So then they say, if you're Revit, I'm Triforma, you're Graphisoft, we'll export all your stuff to IFC, and then we can all talk. But the problem is it's so generic that it's just a wall. So I can get a list of all my walls, but I won't know if it's concrete CMU, precast. I have no clue, because IFC calls it a wall. So, not to confuse the whole issue of BIM, but know what you're going into, know what you want, and when in doubt, I'd say fall back to your specifications. You don't want your model to do something that you don't normally do as an architect. So when I stand back and say, my door is called a door, why is it called a door? Because Division 8, the spec is called steel door or aluminum door or whatever, stainless steel door or whatever it is. Why would I call it something else? So if you take that premise, I think that makes sense. That's just my opinion. The bottom, if they're all different, they'll all be different. Plain and simple. If I call it something and you call it something else, it'll be something else. So, at the end of 2.5 hours, I think the biggest question is, so what? What are you trying to say? Software is a tool. If you walk away and somebody says, so what'd you learn about BIM? Don't say, oh, BIM is Revit. BIM is not software. BIM is a way of thinking. Okay? It's a way to deliver your project. If you want to do it, know what you want your BIM to do. Do you want to make a model to make your drawings? Do you want to make a model to make drawings and visualization? Do you want to be the daring architect in Ontario and give your quantities to the contractor? You know? Why not? Know what your deliverables are. So we term deliverable as anything that I, as architect, am going to turn over and stamp. What are my deliverables? It's drawings, it's probably a visualization, which I won't stamp. Could be a model drive-through, renderings, animations, I don't know, but know what your deliverable is. So when I go and draw my first wall, if you tell me I want to have a construction sequencing video, I'll know that if I have brick going up 5 stories, I won't just make it pop up in 5 stories, I'll make it come up in pieces so that we can actually show the animation. Ensure consistency across your project. This is easy in-house. You're the boss, you say it's going to be done this way, it's done this way. How do you deal with your subs? Your subs are contracted to give you information as per our standard legal documents. How do you force them to do BIM? How do you make them work the way you want them to work to be interoperable? I'm not sure. It's a struggle. It's a struggle we face. And don't jump. Just take well-paced steps and take BIM one step at a time, or else it won't work. You can't do all the BIM tomorrow. It just won't happen. That's it. Thank you all for your attention. there any questions? This guy's got a question. If not, thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Do you have a forecast? I mean, this is inevitable. This is something that nobody can, deny. Do you have a guess as to how long it would be before this becomes commonplace?
We had our first proposal where the region appeals said we want a BIM. And it was like, we've been doing this for 5-6 years, and for the first time, one of our clients have mandated that in their RFP. And we're seeing, like, in the States, it's far more prevalent than it is here in Canada, far more, right? Like, the AIA jumped on this BIM stuff about 4 or 5 years ago. The Department of Defense in the States mandated not only BIM, but it's got to be in microstation format. Made us very happy, but not all the consultants. It's just, I think it's going to be one of those curves that just ripples and starts coming faster and faster. Look at the, if you go to Best Buy, the home design software for $80,
Yeah.
it's BIM based, right? It's a very dumb BIM, but for $80, anybody can buy that and come to you as architect and say, here, look at my model of my house, right? So I look at that and I scratch my head, I'm like, I'm going to be out of business soon if everybody can go and build a BIM. So I haven't purchased it yet, but I want to try. Yes, sir.
I know you mentioned that within your firm you have all the disciplines working together. Have you had experience with mechanical, electrical sub-consultants delivering BIM outside of your office? It
Yes.
just seems to me that in terms of effort, they have the most to, I guess, lose in a certain sense, or have, they have that much more effort to put into the drawing process. So much of the work now is done in a single line, and so much of it is left to the trades to sort of
Right.
take the intent or details and implement it. So if you actually had to pay them extra money to get them to implement that?
Yes and no, because when we get them to implement, we only want them to implement what we need, right? So when we'll sit at the table and they'll say, well, we don't know how to use BIM, this will cost us triple the price. Well, we don't really need you to do BIM, we really need you to provide us with a certain set of information. So one example is, we need to know where you want to put all your electrical panels. So don't give us a one-line diagram saying there's going to be panels in certain intervals along this circuit. We don't care. Give us a plan, give us a model where you actually put the physical location of these panels and call them a panel, and that's BIM enough for us, right? So when we have subs who don't want to, we just give them a minimum requirement. We might just say, just give us a 3D model. Forget about BIM. Give us a 3D model, but call all your transformers a transformer, and just call all your panels a panel. Like, oh, okay, we could do that. They just gave us a BIM. But it's as long as we outline, don't give us the world, give us specifics, and don't get freaked out by the word, just, do what you normally do, and it'll work for us.
Just one question, you identify that you have in the past taken consultants' documents and entered them in a bid and found whatever odd interference.
Yeah.
So if I can understand, if we retain services of consultants, they come out AutoCAD Rivet based, they have the final product before transferring down to construction, wherever, you could actually take that, be able to transfer the bid and find out the interference. Question, who's the ownership of the bid? Is it a consultant or you?
That's a great question. See, for that,
Or is it the client?
that's a good question. That Pantex project, the Department of Energy mandated that we deliver to them a BIM. So they own it. So we had to, and again, I'm not sure, I don't know how our legal department did it, but they had to arrange it so that we would put all our work into this model, we would snap the updated drawings, and we would give them a BIM, a full BIM, like they wanted everything in DGM format. From a liability perspective, I would argue today that you own your own BIM. Now, if you use data from another consultant, and we go through this even internally, if I grab the structural model and put it beside integrated with my architectural model to see the interferences, I'm just referencing their information. Structural engineer owns his drawings and his portion of the model. I, as architect, own my drawings and my portion, but the two talk to each other because they layer on top of each other.
My approach is like that. Liability is not a concern to me at the present time. It's a learning curve for the consultants that are based in Canada
Right.
that will utilize the data. As a client, I have a BIM, it's operational, this consultant's got it, put it in.
Yep.
Now, there's a learning curve that it just stopped. Consultant get cracking, get going for the next project, and so forth. That's one way to build the system up. The ownership of that BIM is spent on the contract involved with the client.
Absolutely. And what I need the OAA to help me with, and I was just talking at the break there, is for them to give us as architects guidelines on when the client, like, because right now the client can say, I want CAD files, and we have, like, I think unwritten guidelines of, well, make sure your stamp isn't on your CAD files, sometimes we take off the border, we dumb down the CAD file a bit and give them the raw data. Well, we're getting RFPs and clients saying, well, I want your BIM. So I need help from the OAA to say, well, when I give the BIM, what should I do so that I'm most protected from a liability perspective? Because according to our client, he owns the BIM, because according to the RFP, we're going to deliver them a BIM. So, and from my perspective, that is what BIM is. We do it, we give it off. But how do we protect ourselves? We need help with that as architects right now, I think. Cool. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Okay, I'll turn this on.